Pro Wrestling Weekly presents Today in Wrestling History, October 6. On this date in 2008, WWE Monday Night Raw aired live from Seattle, Washington. In the main event, Batista defeated John Bradshaw Layfield. On this date in 1997, WCW Monday Nitro aired live from Minneapolis, Minnesota. In the main event, Kurt Hennig pinned Chris Benoit. On this date in 2003, WWE Monday Night Raw aired live from the Mohegan Sun Casino in Uncasville, Connecticut. In the main event, Goldberg defeated Mark Henry by disqualification in a $100,000 bounty match. This has been Today in Wrestling History, October 6.
This is Jim the Anvil Neidhart of the Hart Foundation, and you're listening to Pro Wrestling Weekly with Ferran Derry on 1490 WBCB, baby. Yeah!
Welcome back to Pro Wrestling Weekly here on 1490 WBCB and online at WBCB1490.com. We're wondering what both companies can do to turn their ratings around as they are both heading in downward directions. Of course, Raw getting to just over a 2.5 rating. That's the first time that's happened in about 5 years. And that was also, oddly enough, around the time that John Cena had an injury. That was actually, I think 5 years ago this week that Cena tore his pectoral muscle and was supposed to be out for close to a year, but then made his miraculous return at the Royal Rumble as the 30th entrant and ended up winning it. Probably one of the last few real shocks in professional wrestling, because that was one of those where I don't think anybody really had reported it, or if they knew about it, they kept it under wraps. So the reaction of genuine surprise from that Madison Square Garden crowd, which that is a tough crowd to surprise because they're usually in on everything. I mean, I'd say that New York and Philly crowds are probably the two most in tune with what's going on fan bases. And yes, there's a little bit of bias there. And, I'm not going to rank them 1-2 because that wouldn't necessarily be fair. But yeah, that was the last time we were genuinely surprised, and that's also the last major injury that we saw with Cena that kind of led to things where they are. So it's kind of like history repeating itself in a sense, and you kind of wonder where McMahon is going to go with this. And looks like a little bit of the finger pointing has been put in the direction of Linda McMahon. At least that's what Mike says on the Facebook fan page. He says, "We have Linda McMahon to blame. I'm sorry. We need to go back to the Attitude Era, uncensored. Those who don't like it don't have to watch it. Bring back what us loyal, longtime fans love." Well, I don't know. Just because there's more swearing or more racy content or things like that, is that going to change the fact that that there's no character development or, no really good storylines? I mean, at least then you had something closer to bookers as opposed to Hollywood comedy writers or, Saturday Night Live wannabe comedy writers. I mean, even if we had profanity or closer, more revealing attire in the case of the women's wrestlers, is that going to change John Cena and Sheamus delivering happy-go-lucky jokes and, not taking their opponents seriously? Is that, what will that do as far as developing new stars? I mean, WWE's trying with Ryback, but it looks like this is, I think it's another example of the muscle heads that Vince McMahon loves, who everybody else doesn't seem to necessarily get behind. I mean, we've seen that how many times, even over the last 5 years. I mean, the Great Khali, you've seen it with Vladimir Kozlov. So this just might be Vince McMahon's musclehead flavor of the week, for lack of a better term. Just somebody that Vince wants to get behind, and I don't know if he'll necessarily shirk the comparisons to Goldberg, as they have similar muscular frames. Of course, Ryback not necessarily being as tall, but give WWE credit, at least they're trying. If they back off the push and all of a sudden Ryback becomes irrelevant, like a lot of the aforementioned names that I had before said in the last segment, well, that's going to be a whole nother story. All right, couple more news tidbits here. Of course, former WWE star Sean Diavari. Well, he used a rear naked choke hold to take down a man who was shouting racial slurs and threatening to kill other passengers on an airport-bound train. Diavari telling TMZ, quote, "I wasn't going to wait any longer to see if a cop showed up. After choking the guy out, Diavari threw him off the train on the next stop." So there are some good Samaritans out there, even if they are rather muscular ones, to say the least. Also, a John Cena injury update. Cena addressing his recovery from elbow surgery via Twitter. He said, 2 weeks from surgery, swelling is almost under control, bruises migrating. I'm trying my best to get back to Raw. So who knows, with this State of the WWE address, will Cena make some semblance of an appearance? I guess we'll find out this Monday night. Also, Jeff Hardy, his contract with TNA expires in February. And there have been some rumors of Hardy having either another run with WWE or even working the independent scene with his brother Matt and creating his own schedule. The most likely option, though, is that he'll re-sign with TNA, but obviously with February being 5 months from now, there's still time to get an extension or a renewal done, to say the least. Let's go ahead and get back to the phones. We've got Ron, who's been hanging on patiently. Ron, welcome to Pro Wrestling Weekly.
Yeah, how you doing this week?
Not too bad. What's on your mind?
I'm going to comment about a couple of things. First, TNA and then WWE. I'm going to comment on that tag team match that Sting and Bobby Roode against the Aces of Eight. But, you know, I commented on this on your web, WBCW.com page. Nobody answered my comment on it. I said that I think Bubba Ray's going to turn on Sting. For some reason, he's going to join the Aces of Eight. I just have this odd feeling. And I've never been wrong. But I got a feeling he's going to turn. He was too soon to ask to become the member. He's been bugging for being a member. When they announced that Anderson was going to be it, I knew that was a mistake. I knew that was maybe a ploy to get Aces of Eight worried. But I just got a strange gut feeling that that's going to happen, and Aces of Eight's going to take control. It's going to be like the NWO all over again.
Which certainly could be more disheartening than anything else. Let me rewind for just a second. Did I hear you say that you've never been wrong? Have you been hanging out too much with the rodent?
Well, I might sound like Rob Boyd in a sense, but no, I'm not making predictions like he is. But it's just something about this. It's like when Hulk Hogan had Randy Savage as his partner, and he went against Paul and Nash, and he took off that one shirt, and he had the NWO shirt underneath.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, you can say that your intuition seldom fails you. I mean, but to say that you're never wrong. I mean, come on now, I gotta call you out on that.
I've never been wrong. I mean, maybe I'm gonna be wrong about this one too. But I'm hoping that'd be that way. But I don't know. Who are they going to get that's going to be just like them or better than them? To wrestle, and then if they lose. They know they lost to a good team that they put out.
Well, the problem with a storyline like this is, where's the ultimate end of it? I mean, Aces and Eights obviously isn't going to take over the entire company. I mean, you saw what happened when they tried that with the NWO, and it just became this long, tired thing. I mean, when you have a program that's successful, especially with a particular faction, you run the risk, as we've seen with a lot of different things, you run the risk of overexposure. And, I mean, that some could argue that's what happened with the Four Horsemen. I mean, they had their run in the 80s, and then all of a sudden when you get to the 90s and you've got guys like Paul Roma, and say what you will about him, the late Brian Pillman necessarily being put in there. First name that came to mind, since that's what was mentioned on the Facebook page. But
the reason why I say all this is, look at Immortal. Immortal took over had the company taken over for a long time, and this could go out another year the way it's going.
But I think people are going to be tired of it by then, and people are starting to get tired of it now. Like they kind of want to see what this payoff is and where it's going. And a lot of people are thinking that the main focal point, or the head guy behind Aces and Eights is Eric Bischoff. Which, if that's the case, I think people are going to tune out in droves. I mean, they're going to see Bischoff as a one-trick pony since they saw him as the leader behind the NWO 15 years ago. They saw him as the leader behind Immortal, and now here's another renegade faction, and they see him as the leader behind that. I think the third strike, and a lot of people are going to say, "Sorry, TNA, you're out."
Yeah, well, I'm just kidding. I got them getting used to it. Now, as for WWE, what happened with CM Punk this Monday night, I mean, who was he to tell anybody, like Jim Ross, go back to the back? I mean, and then AJ coming out and doing the match, sending Paul Heyman and sending Vicky to the back. That was the best move she made, I mean, ever, to send them to the back. I mean...
Well, you have to realize, I mean, there's, first of all, I'll answer your JR question first. There's a certain dynamic with WWE being in Oklahoma, Jim Ross's home state, or, so especially near his hometown. He's going to have a lot of family and friends there. Vince McMahon, for whatever reason, loves to embarrass the hell out of Jim Ross whenever they're in Oklahoma. I mean, Ross made a point of it later off the air with the when they aired the rest of the Jim Ross appreciation night. That was where Jim Ross kissed Vince McMahon's backside as part of that infamous club. It was that that ring, that arena. That I think is also, it might have been when they've done so many things to make fun of JR over the years. I forget if that was
arena where when Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler had to take on what is his name? Michael Cole and
was it Cole and Swagger? I think.
Jack Swagger. Isn't that where they embarrassed them? They embarrassed them that night.
Hey, that shows you how to mind Jack Swagger's been. It took you that long to remember who he was. I almost need to put him on a milk carton soon.
Were they embarrassed him that night too, in that arena?
Yeah, there have been a lot of instances, and I don't know what it is. I mean, that'd be one of many questions that I think Vince McMahon should answer, but I don't think he's.
I don't know what's going to come up with this, but everybody's been saying AJ and Booker T will be fired. He's going to be running control of the show again. It's been peaceful without McMahon, grant you, around. But AJ makes me laugh. I enjoy a good laugh when she comes out and she says what she has to say. And Booker T is more serious guy. He's the kind of guy I would rather keep her for comical, him for the seriousness. He's very good serious general manager. I think he's one of the best ones they've had outside of Regal.
See, now Regal, I mean, the key to having a good general manager, and thanks so much for the call, Ron, I got to get rolling. The key to a good general manager is being familiar with the product, being familiar with the characters, possibly even having knowledge of the depth of a particular character's storylines and how, the past might interact. I mean, these are things that the writers should be paying attention to, but really, they're just kind of going week after week and just kind of stringing things together. And next thing you know, you've got people who were bitter enemies 2 months ago are all of a sudden teaming up and are the best of friends. And there's just a lack of consistency. And I think that's probably, that's one of a few glaring issues. You've got a lack of consistency. There's not really anything to kind of cling on to. It's almost like a sampler platter. And you look at that really with both organizations. I mean, TNA is kind of putting the majority of their eggs into this Aces and Eights basket. They've put some decent storylines together, at least on paper, and then when they go and practice them or put them into effect, it doesn't quite work out so well. We've seen that with the Claire Lynch thing, which it looks like that's thankfully going away. I mean, we're kind of getting to that point with Aces and Eights. I mean, you've got this nice, lengthy, bitter feud with the former members of Beer Money, Bobby Roode and James Storm, but I don't know, their feud, it's almost lingering into Rick Martel and Tito Santana's territory, considering how long they've been going back and forth. So I don't know. There's a lot of questions, to say the least, with both organizations. But I think the thing that's going to hurt Raw the most is if they attempt to do things to hot shot or quick fix. I mean, that's what put WCW under, 12 years ago, was, trying something to just get that brief ratings boost, as opposed to trying to continually improve the product and get something that would bring mass fan interest back, as opposed to like a one trick, hey, let's get a 4.0 rating for the night, and then it'll dip back down into the 2s. What do you gain from that? It doesn't do a lot in the short term, and in the long term, it hurts the product, and that's what I think WWE is starting to see. Might they go back? I don't know. It's the shareholders, I guess, is the issue as far as going back to 2 hours, because that's one less hour of ad revenue when their ad revenue is already down because their ratings are down. It's a tricky slope. I mean, might WWE can be able to cut their losses and say, all right, we tried going to 3 hours. We realized that it was too much of a good thing, so we're going to cut it back to 2 hours, just because we want to be able to give you quality as opposed to quantity. I don't know. Will Vince McMahon have enough pride, or be able to swallow his pride and make that kind of statement, or will he just figure, it's got to be some other reason other than what I'm doing that's causing fans to not tune in. He'll probably blame Monday Night Football, because football is cutting into the audience a little bit, but I mean, these are numbers that are low numbers that we haven't seen in quite a while. I mean, we saw it once maybe about 5 years ago, and then you have to go back to the 1 hour the 1 hour Raws to when the ratings were at that level. So I don't know. Will they be able to kind of go back, kind of like TNA did when they made that experiment to go Monday nights head to head with Raw, and that didn't work out? I mean, they realized 9 weeks in, okay, this isn't working. We got to get back to where we were. WWE, I mean, July 23rd, and it's now, we're now into early October, so it's probably been about that length of time. Is it time for them to say, all right, this 3 hour every week thing is going to be too much? I don't know. It certainly remains to be seen. And then, of course, you've got the extra programming of the main event, where you've got a couple of matches. You got a match on Saturday Morning Slam. It just seems to be too much with too few storylines to sink your teeth into. At least that's what I think. You can certainly leave your thoughts and remarks on the WBCB Pro Wrestling Weekly fan page. Of course, check that out on Facebook. And, of course, archives of the show are available on YouTube. Just look up WBCB Pro Wrestling Weekly, and there's also a link to it. John was nice enough to post that last week on the Facebook fan page. That's going to do it for me. Stay tuned. Bill Melody is up next. He's got the Country Music Hall for you. I will be back next week. And, of course, we'll be previewing Bound for Glory. I'll have my predictions certain to go wrong for the pay-per-view. And then, of course, the following week, the 20th, unless there's another change like there was today, I'll be preempted for high school sports. But then that'll pretty much take care of the football season, and we'll be rolling every week like we usually try to do here on Pro Wrestling Weekly on 1490 WBCB.